10 seconds, don't do anything. Simply close your eyes and imagine a world where no new life is formed. No new human babies, no new puppies, and no new plants in the garden. One generation passes, then the next, and eventually all the life forms disappear. Now open your eyes and realize that this is not what exactly happens. The reason why we are still able to see the world around us is because of a process called reproduction. So hi everyone, I am Kirti Ma'am, your biology educator, and in today's session we will understand how do organisms reproduce and how continuity of life is maintained from one generation to the next. Now before we go ahead, let me tell you that why this chapter is important, because questions comes from diagrams, differences, asexual and sexual reproduction. And if you watch this video till the end, you will be automatically feeling confident in solving those questions. To make it easier for you, we will provide you with the class notes as well as DPPs absolutely free of cost. The link to which is given in the description box below. You simply have to click on it so that you can be taken to Physicswala's app where you will get all these study materials absolutely free. If you're new here and don't know what Physicswala is, it is India's largest learning platform where every year lakhs of learners enroll in their desired courses and achieve their dream percentages because of proper guidance, exam-focused notes and concept-oriented lectures. So if you have not enrolled in the course, this is the right time to do so. Now, have you ever seen that a dog is giving birth to a human baby? Sounds strange, right? No matter how much we love dogs, but a dog will always give birth to a dog and a human will always give birth to a human. Which is obvious, but who decides all these patterns? Why is life so fixed? The answer lies in one particular term called as reproduction. So in today's session, we will cover the following topics. Firstly, we will understand the introduction to the term reproduction, followed by variations and its importance. Then we will cover asexual reproduction and its types, followed by sexual reproduction and ultimately reproductive health. To make things easier, let us first understand the name of the chapter, wherein the major term that we need to understand is reproduce. Talking about reproduce, let us break into two shorter terms, re and produce. Re means again and produce means to create. Now let us read the name of the chapter once again. It means how do organisms again create organisms which are similar looking to themselves. For example, a dog giving birth to puppies, a human giving birth to human babies, and a cattle giving birth to a calf. So the pattern remains fixed. That is what reproduction exactly is, where an organism gives birth to similar looking organisms of its own type. So it is the process by which living organisms produce new individuals of their own type. You will never see that a human is giving birth to a dog baby or a dog giving birth to a human. That is what reproduction is all about. But it is not very essential. Unlike your life processes like respiration, digestion, excretion, transportation, all of these are vital processes to sustain life. If any of these processes don't work, the life of a person can be in danger. But reproduction is not one such life process. For example, if a couple decides not to have a baby during their entire lifetime, their health will not be impacted at all. They will still be as happy and healthy as before. But then the question comes, what is the need for reproduction, especially if it is the process which is not essential and also consumes a lot of energy? There must be some strong reasons that back it up. Exactly. The first reason is it is responsible to maintain continuity of life. Now what does that mean? All of us know that every living organism is on earth for a finite period of time. No organism is immortal. And in order to produce your generations, coming generations, one has to reproduce. For example, human produces humans. So there is an earlier generation of humans which produces the next generation. When the older one dies, the newer children produce more babies. And that is how life is being maintained. If a particular species decides not to reproduce, after some time their entire species will vanish and disappear from Earth. It also helps in noticing and identifying organisms. Humans, since they give rise to human babies, we know that they are similar looking organisms. A rose plant will always form a new rose plant and a mango tree will always form a mango tree. We never get confused between mango tree and rose plant. This is because since in reproduction, the organisms that are new produced, the children that are produced are similar to their parents. So it makes the identification process even easier. Now reproduction beta also helps in creating variations and evolution. Now over here you might see two terms, variations as well as evolution. Don't get confused, let us understand with an example. Every year you know that iPhone new model is being launched. This year iPhone 17 was launched, next year iPhone 18, then iPhone 19, then iPhone 20. iPhone remains the same, but there are certain features that are being changed in every coming year. The model gets a little bit advanced, right? So we can say every year there is some variation that is being found. This variation attracts users. The same way when reproduction takes place, there are some variations, there are some differences. For example, our parents have given birth to us. And there are some differences. We do not look exactly photocopies of our parents. Both of our generations are easily distinguishable, or you or your sibling are easily distinguishable, because when reproduction takes place, new characters are formed, variation take place. This helps in evolution. Don't get confused with the term evolution. We will just study it in a coming while, okay? So I'm star marking this particular word. Now to come to the question, why does variation actually occur? Before we understand that, we should first understand that why organisms that are being produced are similar to their parents. Why not exact photocopies? For example, if you see over here, Shah Rukh Khan's son looks somewhat similar to him, right? Saif Ali Khan's sons also somewhat look similar to him. Sir Obama's children also look somewhat similar to him. But they are not exactly photocopies. You never get confused between Shah Rukh Khan and his son and say, oh my god, he is Shah Rukh Khan. No, right? Likewise, in these cases, you never get confused between who is the parent and who is the child. The reason is whenever reproduction takes place, some variations occur, some differences occur, because of which we are able to distinguish two particular organisms. They might be similar looking as in these particular cases, but they are not exact Xerox. And that means that whenever reproduction takes place, organisms do not produce exact photocopies. So the newer organisms do show some differences. Exactly that is being written over here. Organisms do not create exact copies of themselves. There are always some small differences, and these small differences are called as variations. But who decides to create these variations? Does the parent decide that, oh my god, I want my child to have a long height, so that is the variation that my child should have. I want my child to be very muscular, so that is the variation that should have, because I don't have a muscular body. Right? So all these differences are controlled by something that is present in our cell, which is called as the blueprint of life, or DNA. DNA, I think you must have studied in lower grades that it is called as the deoxyribonucleic acid. It is a genetic material. Just in case you do not remember the basics, don't worry, I will make you understand this with the help of a beautiful diagram. See, you know that all living organisms are made up of cells. I hope everybody will agree to the statement that all living organisms are made up of cell. Wherever there is cell, there is life. Okay, and in the cell there is a particular control center that is called as the nucleus. In the cell there is a particular control center that is called as the nucleus. Inside the nucleus, if we open up the nucleus, we will find chromosomes. We just pick out one structure, and that is called as, students, chromosomes. Talking about chromosomes, again, it is made up of two things. Firstly, it is made up of DNA, and it is made up of protein. So imagine this to be some kind of charkha that you use for flying kites. You have the body of the charkha, and then around it you just wrap the thread. Exactly, DNA is basically a thread-like structure. Now, since this thread is too long, we have to wrap it around something. So, we wrap it around the protein. Okay, let's say this is the protein, and around which the DNA will be wrapped. Okay, this is what the structure somewhat looks like, the details of which you will study in the higher classes. Okay, now for protein we don't need to understand anything. We are first going to understand something about DNA. Okay, so if I talk about chromosome, what are we going to focus on? DNA, which is called as deoxyribonucleic acid. Beta, it looks like somewhat a double helical structure, just like you have two threads and you have just crossed them up. This is what your DNA looks like. Now, on this DNA, there are very, very small portions of genes. There are small portions of genes, and on one DNA, there are multiple genes that are being present. Over here, let us say one gene, second gene, third gene, fourth gene, and so on and so forth. Many genes are present on a particular DNA. Now, this gene is controlling every single thing in your body. Right from how you look physically, your external features, your eye color, your hair color, your body shape, body pattern, height, to your internal features, internal functions that are happening all the time are controlled by genes. So basically we can say that DNA is the blueprint of life. Why? Because blueprint is beta something that has all the information to do something. It has all the information to perform something. So blueprint of life is DNA, because this DNA has all the information in the form of genes to perform all the functions. I hope it is clear. Blueprint in basic terms means any instruction manual to perform a particular action. For example, if you buy a new television, if you buy a new car, if you buy any electrical appliance, you will always get a manual with it as to how to use that particular product, because that blueprint has all the information. Likewise, the blueprint of life, to maintain life, the blueprint happens to be DNA, because DNA has all the information in the form of genes. For example, if I can say this particular is the gene for your hair color, this particular gene is for your eye color. So this will control the color of the hair, this will control the color of your eyes, and this is how the entire information is being stored in for the human body. But now we have still not got the answer that how do variations actually occur. We have understood that yes, the blueprint of life is DNA, but how are the changes occurring? Understand this with the help of a small diagram. Let us say this is one particular parent cell. As you know, when one particular cell divides, beta, it divides into two daughter cells. Whenever one particular cell divides, it forms two daughter cells. So these are the two daughter cells, okay? I'm simply gonna write these are the daughter cells. Now, each cell, beta, has DNA. Each cell will have DNA that will contain all the information. So if we suppose this particular cell has this chromosome which has the DNA. For your understanding, I am going to simply make one chromosome, but understand that any cell will have more than one chromosome. Usually most cells have more than one chromosomes. Okay, so this is one particular chromosome. When the cell divides, beta, it has to replicate so that the same kind of chromosome can be passed on to both the daughter cells also. So when this chromosome will decide to replicate, it will start forming its own copy. Just like you have your notes and your friend asks, can I get your notes, because I have to make a Xerox of it so that I can also study for exams. So ultimately you get two copies. Likewise, beta, when this particular chromosome divides, it will form a copy of itself. And once it has formed a copy of itself, there might be a chance that there are some variations that occur. There are some variations that occur because of some wrong copying mechanism. Okay. Now, once the cell will divide, both of these will move into separate cells. Both of these will move in the separate cell. So, one cell will get a particular chromosome like this, which has the DNA absolutely unmodified, unchanged, while the other cell will have the DNA which is slightly modified, which has got some change because it is some kind of error in DNA replication. So this is the variation in DNA. This cell will have beta variation in the DNA. That is how the mechanism works, that whenever variations occur, it occurs because of error in DNA replication. So let us just write the same thing over here, that how does variation occur? Because of variations occur because of errors in DNA replication. Okay, there are some errors in DNA replication which will lead to variation. Let us try to understand this even better with the help of an example. Okay, so today's beta modern man looks very well polished, very well put together. We are very concerned about how the way we look, how we present ourselves, about our surroundings, right? This is the modern day man who is very well put together. But do you think millions of years ago the man was as sophisticated as he is present today? No, right? We took so much time to be here where we are today. So which means long back, the man had some different features. If you trace back, you see the man was very different from today's put together man. Okay, so initially if we see, the earlier species were ape-like. So humans' ancestors were ape-like. Okay, beta. Now when they replicate, when they reproduced, they form a new organism. Why did they form a new organism? Different from them. As you can see, this is slightly bent. This is even better in terms of the back posture. They are slightly able to stand. So when they beta reproduced, there was some variation in the DNA which created a new individual. Okay, when they reproduced, there was some variation in the DNA because of which a new individual was created. Now when they reproduced, they also had some variation in DNA. So a newer individual with a complete straight back was evolved. When they particularly reproduced, they created organisms which were even having different variations, like they were having bigger brains, they were having the ability to be very self-sufficient, they started hunting for their food, they were using weapons also. Okay, now when these organisms reproduced, they created a man which was even more advanced because of variation in DNA. Now when they reproduced, there were some other variations, so the man got even more advanced, and finally when they reproduced, they even created some variations that led to today's modern man. So over a period of time, whenever reproduction takes place, there are some differences. And when these differences takes place, beta, there is always going to be some change that is seen in the human body. Okay, or any living organism's body. For example, you must have seen that there are some parents who are short-heighted, but their children may be long-heighted. Pond, which is a small water body, okay, and the temperature of this pond, let us say, is about 25 degrees Celsius more or less. Every time the temperature of the pond remains to be somewhere around 25 degrees Celsius. Now in the pond there were some bacteria which were actually growing, and these bacteria beta were able to tolerate a temperature range of 10 degrees Celsius to 30 degrees Celsius. They were able to tolerate a temperature range of 10 degrees Celsius to 30 degrees Celsius. So they were easily able to grow in this particular pond because the temperature of the pond always remained to be 25 degrees Celsius, which falls in their tolerable range. 25 will be somewhere over here, so they are able to tolerate that particular range, and hence they were able to survive in this particular water body. Now, once when they were reproducing, they produced some other kind of bacteria which led to variation. When they were reproducing, they created some other kind of bacteria which had some variation in the temperature range, and they could handle a temperature of about 10 degrees Celsius to 50 degrees Celsius. Because they reproduced, there was some kind of variation, because of which they were now able to tolerate a even wider temperature range. Got it? Now everything was going okay, everything was going smoothly. But one fine day, what happens is that a nearby industry deposits very warm water in this pond. They just release a lot of very warm water in this pond, because of which the temperature of the pond rose from 25 degrees Celsius to 45 degrees Celsius now. It rose from 25 degrees Celsius to 45 degrees Celsius now. So all these bacteria who were able to survive only till 30 degrees Celsius, beta, they died. They died because as the temperature went up, they were not able to survive, so they died. But these particular new set of bacteria who were produced because of variation, they could tolerate till 50 degrees Celsius. So temperature was easily less than their tolerable range. So they were able to survive. So these particular bacteria were able to survive this hot water condition, this change in the environment also. So did you realize that whenever variations takes place, there is always some change, because of which it helps in the survivability of organisms, correct? And these are the reasons that variations are absolutely essential in a particular species. Now variation means differences among individuals of the same species. Very important, beta. You have to mention that same species are involved. You cannot say that, ma'am, humans and dogs look different. Obviously, they are different species, they will be different. But we have to talk about variations in a same particular species. Now, talking about importance of variation, please mark it down as important, because this is sometime asked in a 2-marker question, that why is variation important? It helps living organism to survive, like you saw in the previous example. It helps an organism to adapt to the changes, to whatever changes taking place in the environment. It helps them to adapt to that. It supports evolution. Evolution means beta the formation of a new species gradually. Okay, it leads to the formation of new species, which is basically the same thing as evolution. So you can club these points also together. So majorly you should remember these 3 points, that what is the importance of variation and the definition of variation also. Now moving forward to types of reproduction. There are, students, basically 2 types of reproduction. Firstly, we have asexual reproduction. And then we have sexual reproduction. Talking about asexual reproduction, students, it involves only one parent. Only one parent is involved. In case of asexual reproduction, there is no gamete formation that takes place. Now you might think that, ma'am, what is a gamete? Gamete, students, are actually your reproductive cells. These are actually your reproductive cells. So simply the cells which are involved in reproduction, they are called as your gametes. So since only one parent is involved, beta, there will be no gamete formation. And since there is no gamete formation, तो gamete fertilization भी नहीं होगा. जब gamete ही नहीं बन रहा है, so how can fertilization takes place? So no fertilization takes place. Okay. Then again, offspring that are produced are absolutely genetically similar to the parent. Understand this. For example, if you get a particular note copy xeroxed, you will find that to be absolutely identical to the main copy. Okay. Because since in Xerox, every single detail is being replicated. Whether the page number, the line, the gaps, the mistakes, everything. Same happens in the case of asexual reproduction, that whenever one single parent produces a new organism, there is no difference in the new organism or the children. Okay, so the offspring formed, offsprings beta means nothing but children. Okay, offspring simply mean children, but since children is quite a generic term, we will use a biological term, offspring. They are produced, are genetically similar to the parents, and beta children which are genetically similar to the parents are also called as clones. They are also called as clones. Okay, so the genetic makeup of the children as well as their parent will both be exactly Xerox of each other, and then the children are called as clones. Talking about sexual reproduction, which also takes place in humans, right? It involves two parents. There is involvement of two parents in case of sexual reproduction. In sexual reproduction, gametes are also formed, beta. Gametes are your reproductive cells. So since the gamete is formed, there will be fertilization of gametes also. Gamete fertilization means simply the meeting of two gametes. They fuse, their nucleus also fuse. Okay. So fertilization of gametes also takes place. Not to worry, we are going to cover this in your further session. Offspring form are genetically dissimilar to the parent. Offspring beta that are formed, the children that are produced are not exactly Xerox of their parents. For example, we no doubt are product of our parents, but do we look exactly their replica? No, we carry certain differences. Although we might share some common features, our facial features, our body patterns or our body structure might resemble the parents, but there are very, very easily distinguishable differences. Okay, so in case of sexual reproduction, there are differences that are going to be seen. Talking about the types of asexual reproduction that we are going to be covering are firstly fission. Fission basically has two important types that we are going to cover. First is binary fission, then we have multiple fission. Then we will cover budding, regeneration, fragmentation, spore formation and vegetative propagation. Let us try to cover them one by one. Firstly, we have fission. In fission also, we are firstly going to understand better binary fission. Understand this from the name itself, because when you try to understand things from the name, it becomes easier for you to understand and memorize. Okay. So in binary beta, bi means two and fission means breakdown. Fission means breakdown. So in case of binary fission, one parent cell beta, it will break down into two daughter cells. One parent cell, I am saying one parent cell PC will break down into two daughter cells. Okay. So since two daughter cells are being formed, it is called as binary fission. Example is of amoeba beta. Amoeba, I think we also studied in life processes when you were understanding nutrition. Okay, so amoeba, I think all of you know, is this particular organism who does not have a fixed shape. Now when beta this amoeba, since it is a eukaryotic cell, although you have to know this, I am simply going to mention it. Okay, it is eukaryotic in nature. Now since it is a eukaryotic cell beta, it will have all the features like a very, very well developed nucleus. Okay, membrane bound organelles. Okay, this is a eukaryote. Now beta, once this amoeba is fully grown, it is fully mature, it will try to divide. So what does it do? It will firstly beta lengthen its nucleus. Can you see over here? The nucleus starts stretching so that it can split into two halves. When the nucleus is being lengthened, it eventually divides into two daughter nuclei. This is one nucleus and this is other nucleus. So nucleus eventually divide into two, and this process is beta called as karyokinesis. This is called as karyokinesis. Nucleus division is called as karyokinesis, because karyo means nucleus and kinesis means division. So nucleus ultimately divided into two parts. Simultaneously, you also can observe that the cytoplasm has started dividing. The cytoplasm has also now started strengthening, you know. It is also stretching to divide into two parts. So it started stretching, and then you can see cytoplasm beta also tried to divide. So the division of cytoplasm is also called as cytokinesis. Cytokinesis means cyto means cell or cytoplasm and kinesis means division. So cytoplasm division has taken place. Once nucleus division taken place, cytokinesis has taken place. Eventually there will be formation of two daughter cells, two daughter amoeba, as you can see. This is the first one. This is the first one and this is the second one, and both of them, if you observe closely beta, they exactly look like their parents. Both of them exactly look like the parent cell. So this is what happens in asexual reproduction, that daughter cells are exactly photocopies of the parent cells. Okay. Now, one more thing to remember is, over here you saw that amoeba is dividing in this particular plane. है ना, this is what it is happening over here, and then you saw two cells. But it is not necessary that always amoeba will divide in this particular plane, that is horizontal. It can also divide vertically, it can also divide diagonally, or whichever angle it feels like it can divide. There is no particular angle in which its division takes place. Okay. Now the second type of binary fission that we have to study is basically in Leishmania, and Leishmania, students, it is basically responsible for causing a disease that is called Kala Azar. Kala Azar or black fever is a disease that is called by Leishmania, and beta, this black fever is called black. I think you can understand from the name itself that when this fever happens, the body actually turns black in color. Okay, it is also a eukaryotic cell, as you can tell, because it is a well-defined nucleus also. Okay, now when we talk about Leishmania beta, unlike amoeba, it has a fixed plane of division. It cannot divide randomly from any particular direction. It cannot divide diagonally, cannot divide horizontally. It will always divide vertically in a longitudinal fashion. Okay, so this particular is your parent cell. This is basically your parent cell which will undergo your division process. And when you see its division, can you see that it has divided longitudinally in this fashion? है ना, this is your vertical direction, longitudinal direction is being used for the division, and ultimately two daughter Leishmania are now produced. So there is fixed plane of division. Okay, so I'm going to write that they have fixed plane of division, that is your longitudinal direction. Okay, longitudinal. Now let us understand the whole mechanism of how it tries to divide. Over here beta, you can see that this is one Leishmania. It has a flagella that is coming out from its one end. Okay, so as the first step beta, this Leishmania will try to duplicate its flagella. So can you see this flagella has started growing? Okay, now when this flagella started growing, simultaneously the nucleus also tried to split into two parts. This is first nucleus and this is beta second nucleus. They are trying to split. Okay, now when they are trying to split, at the same time flagella is growing even further. Flagella bhi aage badhta ja raha hai, so it is also increasing in length. Now eventually when the karyokinesis has taken place and over here two daughter nuclei are being formed, the flagella is still growing. Okay, now over here as you can see two daughter nuclei, the flagella formation is also now completed over here, and at the same time division has also started taking place in the longitudinal frame. Division has also started taking place in the longitudinal frame in this particular direction. Okay, now further, since the flagella is now completed beta, since the nucleus division is now completed, so simply the body will divide into two halves longitudinally. Okay, so this will take place and eventually it will ultimately form two daughter Leishmanias. One will be this particular one and the other one would be this particular one. So this is how they divide. Two daughter cells are now being formed, but the plane remains to be fixed. Okay, moving forward to our next type of fission, that is called as multiple fission. But a fission again will mean breakdown. Multiple means many. Multiple means many. So over here we can understand that one parent cell will divide to form multiple daughter cells. Okay, that is the meaning of multiple fission. One parent cell will form many daughter cells. This is seen in Plasmodium. But a Plasmodium is actually a malarial parasite. Plasmodium is actually a malarial parasite. Why is it called a malarial parasite? Because it is responsible for causing malaria. It is responsible for causing malaria. Now you might think that, ma'am, we have studied that mosquitoes cause malaria. Beta, mosquitoes actually spread malaria. Okay, the reason that why are they able to spread malaria is because in their mouth they fill a lot of plasmodium. In the mouth of the mosquito there is a lot of plasmodium that they fill. Now once they go and infect a particular organism or human being, they spit out all the plasmodium and then the plasmodium will cause malaria over there. So mosquito happens to be a carrier. The actual causative organism is your plasmodium, which will cause malaria. Okay, now talking about malaria, talking about plasmodium, see, try to understand the structure. This particular is the cell. This particular is your cell. Okay, just follow the things clearly. This is the cell, and inside the cell is the nucleus. This is the cell and this is the nucleus. Okay, this is the plasma membrane, this is the nucleus. But then you might think that, ma'am, what is the outer covering that we see over here? What is this particular covering? This is a protective covering outside the cell. The cell is actually inside. The cell is actually, this is your cell. But the outer protective covering is actually your cyst. This protective covering is called as the cyst, or a protective covering that will cover the cell or protect the cell. Okay, now what happens is the cell starts to divide. The cell will start to divide. Okay, it has started dividing over here, as you can see. When this cell divides, it will form 1 to 2, 2 to 4, 4 to 8, 8 to 16, so on and so forth. So this particular cell, when it started dividing, it formed many cells. After so many divisions, it started forming many cells. There are so many cells that are being formed, and even now they are enclosed in this particular cyst. This is a cyst that is still covering all the cells. Okay, now what happens is that since many daughter cells are being produced, after some time the cyst will break. The cyst will break. Once the cyst breaks, all the daughter cells are now released in the environment. All the daughter cells are being now released in the environment. That is how multiple fission simply takes place. I hope you are all clear with first type of asexual reproduction, that is fission. We have completed binary fission and its types and multiple fission and its types. Now we will come to the next mode of asexual reproduction, that is called as budding, which takes place in hydra. But a hydra actually is a multicellular organism, and if you feel that this looks like green in color, so this is a plant, no this is actually an aquatic organism. Okay, this is a multicellular aquatic organism. This lives in water. Okay, now understand this again, very simple to know. Since we talk about hydra which lives in water, do you see this hair-like structure that are coming out? These are called as tentacles. These structures are called as tentacles. Okay, they will help the hydra to move. Okay, they will help the hydra to move, and they will also help in capturing the food from the environment. Now, since this hydra what does it start doing in case of budding? There are some special cells. This is the parent hydra that will start the process of budding. Okay, it will start developing a bud over here. It will start developing a bud over here in the body because of reactive cell division. The cells over here will start dividing very rapidly, very fast, and because of which they will start forming a bud. Okay, they will start forming a bud because at this point the cell division was taking place very fast. This bud that you can see is also called as outgrowth. Why is it called outgrowth? Because it is growing outside the body. It is going towards the outside, so that is why it is called as the outgrowth. Okay, now since the cellular division is taking place very fast, this division will even proceed further, and when it proceeds further, it will start forming a new hydra. It will also start developing its body. It will also form all the tentacles. And once this new bud, new hydra is fully mature, beta, it will try to break off from the parent body and it will separate. So this is the new hydra. Okay, since it was mature, it separated from the parent hydra and formed a new one now, which will grow into an individual that is absolutely similar to the parent but also an individual identity. So that is what takes place in case of hydra. Now in hydra, budding does take place as a mode of asexual reproduction. But hydra beta also reproduces by another kind of method that is called as regeneration. Okay, so this was also asked one time in boards, that which is that particular organism that uses budding as well as regeneration as a mode of reproduction. That is your hydra. Okay, now try to understand this, which is also very basic. See, what is happening over here is this is basically your hydra, and once it got, because of any reason, it got cut into two parts, maybe because of any kind of damage, any kind of injury, any kind of harsh water stream that broke it down into two halves. Okay, now each half beta, each half is able to regenerate the entire lost body part. So from this, the lower portion was lost, so it regenerated the lost body part over here. Likewise, this particular portions, when was able to regenerate, it developed the upper body part including all the tentacles. Okay, so this is what regeneration means, to generate something once again. That is seen in hydra, because every single part was able to generate the lost part. The same kind of mechanism is also seen in planaria. Planaria, students, is actually a flat worm. Okay, it is a flat worm. From the name itself it is clear that it must be flat in nature, something which is very chapta hua. Okay, this is a parent planaria. Now parent planaria beta, when it broke down into certain parts because of some damage, because of some injury, each part was able to regrow into a fully developed new individual. Each part beta was able to develop into a fully grown new individual. These are your new daughter planaria and they look exactly like the parent planaria. Why was this possible? Because each part could develop the lost body part. So this one would also able to develop the lower body part. Can you see? This is how they developed the full planaria from this particular fragment. This central body part also developed the head as well as the tail. The lower body part was able to develop the entire head and the rest of the body. This is what happens in regeneration. Okay, now regeneration is mostly a mode of repair of the lost tissues and the body parts, but in some organism it can also act as a mode of reproduction. Not to worry, we will cover this once we understand fragmentation, because when you understand this, you will be able to distinguish the two processes even better. Okay, talking about beta fragmentation, fragmentation is seen in Spirogyra. Spirogyra is actually a multicellular algae. It is a multicellular algae. Okay, multicellular algae. Okay, you might think that this is looking like one cell, but actually these are multiple cells. These are actually multiple cells. This is not just one cell. This is not one cell. These are actually multiple cells. And this is just what I'm drawing in a very rough pattern, but there are many cells that are forming this fragment. Okay. Now, beta, what happens is that this particular Spirogyra, it actually breaks down into certain fragments. It actually breaks down into certain fragments. So let's just suppose that this is your fragment 1. This is your fragment 2. And then we have the fragment 3. So the body got divided into multiple fragments naturally. Okay, there was no damage, no loss of organs. It just divided into certain fragments. Okay, now each fragment beta is able to form the entire body of the Spirogyra. Each fragment is able to form the entire Spirogyra. Can you see? Each fragment then developed into a fully grown new individual of Spirogyra. This is what is happening in fragmentation, because each fragment is capable of producing a full and a well developed new organism. So that is what usually takes place over here. Okay, now what is the difference actually between regeneration and fragmentation? You might get this question, and a lot of students also feel this as a slightly confusing topic, because you can think that, ma'am, in case of fragmentation, every single fragment is developing into a new individual, but in case of regeneration also we found that one planaria part was able to form a new organism. See beta, when we talk about regeneration, it means to generate again. It is not when the body naturally divides into parts. In case of regeneration, over here there was some kind of injury. There was some kind of injury which led to the breakdown of the body, and then the individual part was able, able to develop into a full new part. Okay, it is not image, it is actually injury. Okay, so over here this was not a natural process, it was when there was some damage of the parts. But in case of when we talk about Spirogyra, the body naturally has to divide so that it can produce more number of offsprings. Okay, in case of regeneration, the lost body part is regenerated because there are some regenerative cells. These are specialized cells that are present in certain organisms. But in case of fragmentation, the body do not has regenerative cell. The body has the cells that will help in division and formation of a new body. Okay, so this is natural. This will happen in all cases when the body has to reproduce. But for regeneration, that will mostly happen when there is a loss of body parts because of some injury or damage. But yes, certain times it can be used as reproductive method also, but mostly or primarily I can say it is meant to compensate for the loss of body parts. There are some differences that I have jotted down. Very important, please take a screenshot also. When we talk about fragmentation, the parent body breaks into 2 or more parts. Okay? This is natural breaking. This is naturally the body has to break. There is no damage or injury. Each fragment develops into a new organism. It mainly occurs in simple organisms and it is a method of reproduction. Example in Spirogyra, that is your multicellular algae. But talking about regeneration, it is the ability of an organism to regrow lost or damaged parts. This will not happen naturally, beta. Okay, so one day Planera will not feel that, oh, I need to develop, so let's break. It will happen when there is mostly an injury wala case. The cut or broken pieces regrows into complete organism, occurs in organism with specialized cells called as regenerative cells. So in organism which have regenerative cells, only and only their regeneration will take place. Okay, it can also be a method of repair as well as reproduction, but primarily beta, it is a method of repair, and then sometimes it is a method of reproduction also. For example, you can see Planaria as well as Hydra. Now coming to the next type of asexual reproduction, that is spore formation. In case of spore formation, beta, this takes place actually in your rhizopus or bread mold. Don't get confused, simply understand this bread. You must have seen if there is a bread that is kept, uneaten in the moist environment, you might see that after certain days it looks something like this, because on it the particular fungus rhizopus has grown. So rhizopus, beta, it is a multicellular fungi. Rhizopus, which is also called as bread mold, it is basically the other name for rhizopus. It is actually a multicellular algae. Multicellular fungi. Now this multicellular fungi, beta, how does it grow on the bread? How does it grow on the bread? Let us try to understand. See, this is your, bread mold. Over here, this entire, very gross pattern that you can see. Okay. So what is happening is over here, if I take out and try to analyze, I am going to find rhizopus. But a rhizopus structure somewhat looks like this. Okay, now understand this, rhizopus is not unlike your simple body structure. It is a fungus. So what is happening? See, do you see this long stalk-like pattern? Understand the diagram because important again from board's point of view. This is the long stalk, a long filament, beta. This filament is called as hypha. This is called as hypha. Okay, so I can label, this is your hypha. Okay, this is also your hypha and this is also your hypha. This long stalk-like filaments are basically your hypha. Okay, now this entire network of hypha, do you see there are only 3 to make things easier, but there are so many hypha that are going to be there like this. So this entire network of hypha, beta, it is called as mycelium. The entire network of hypha is called as mycelium. Okay, on this hypha, can you see that there is a balloon-like structure? This balloon-like structure on the hypha, can you see? Okay, this, beta, is actually called as your sporangium. This particular structure is termed as a sporangium. Okay, this represents sporangium, and sporangium is actually a bag of spores, just like your bag has books. Okay, so this sporangium is also like a bag of spores. there will be many spores inside this bag. Okay, as you can see this structures, right? These are all your spores which are actually present inside the sporangium or this bag. Okay, so when this bag beta is full of spores, it will burst, and once it bursts, it opens and all the spores come in the environment. When all these spores are present in the environment, what do? By the action of wind, since they are very lightweight, they can travel to multiple places. If these spores land on the bread, if these spores beta actually land on the bread, they get a very favorable condition. They get a very favorable condition to grow on the bread, because bread has all the nutrients. Okay, since it has all the nutrients, the temperature around the bread is also very favorable for the growth. The moisture is also very good. The humidity is also very good. So it starts to replicate. And this spore will eventually, this one single tiny spore will eventually form your entire rhizopus mycelium. So over here, whatever you see now, over here, whatever you see is actually all done by not one spore, many spores, but they are actually responsible for forming this mycelium kind of a structure. This is what takes place in case of your bread when it is getting rotten because of the fungus. Now moving to the last type of asexual reproduction, that is called as vegetative propagation. Very important. Understand beta. Propagate means to spread something. Vegetative means from the vegetative parts. As you know, a plant usually grows with the help of a seed. Right? When you want to grow a plant, you prefer the seed, you sow it in the soil, and then a new plant grows. But in case of vegetative propagation, the new plant is actually beta formed not from the seed, but from the root, stem or leaf of the parent plant. So if I have one particular plant, I'll use the root, stem and leaf, sow it in the soil, and then there will be a new plant formation. So you don't need any kind of seed here. And whenever such kind of method of reproduction takes place, it is called as vegetative propagation, because you are actually using the vegetative parts such as root, stem, leaf or stem cutting to develop a new plant. Okay. So, it is a kind of asexual reproduction in which new plants are produced from vegetative parts instead of seeds. You don't need seeds over here. For example, root, using the root, sweet potato is being formed. Using the stem, potato, ginger, onion is being formed. Using the leaf, bryophyllum. From the stem, cutting, rose, sugarcane and bougainvillea. Don't get confused, understand this simply. See, this is your potato. And if you leave this potato for some time, beta, what will you see? There will be some eyes formation. All these structures that you can see, all these structures that come out from the potato are basically the eyes. Okay. Now this potato beta actually is an underground stem. This is an underground stem that you get. Okay. If you leave it, there will be eyes formation. You cut these eyes, put it in the soil, a new potato plant will form. Okay. So using this potato eyes, you have now developed a new plant, and potato is what? It is actually an underground stem. Same is with onion. Okay. Same is with ginger. Onion also beta, you see, if you leave the onion for some time, it will from one end start forming the sprouting. You will see some elongations from one end. Okay. So if you put that onion in the soil, it will again form a new onion plant. Got it? Talking about sweet potato, it's formed from the root of the particular plant. Okay, so if you talk about sweet potato, there will be some outgrowth. Take it and then sow it in the soil, new plant will form. Got it? Talking about leaf, such as over here, that is bryophyllum. This bryophyllum beta has some buds developing on its edges, on its boundary. This is the bryophyllum leaf, and there are some buds that are being formed. Can you see these are the buds? Okay, and if these buds they fall off and now are on the soil, these bud will be responsible for forming a new entire plant. This bud will be responsible for forming a new entire plant. So did the new plant grow from the seeds? No, it grew from the buds. These were the buds, and this was responsible for creating a new plant. So this is also a mode of vegetative propagation. Example, in case of stem cutting, you see rose. When you have to plant a rose, you don't go for the seeds. You simply just cut a stem, put it in the soil, and a new rose plant grows. Likewise in case of sugarcane, likewise in case of bougainvillea. Simply you just have to cut one from the stem and put it in the soil, and this will now grow into a new bougainvillea plant. But now why is it so important? What is the advantage of having a vegetative reproduction? There can be many asked in format of 3-mark question or 2-mark question. So please remember, there are certain points I have jotted down so that if you can remember any 3 of them also, you will be able to secure the marks. Okay, talking about the first one, the new plants beta that will be formed will be exactly identical to the parent, because beta there is no kind of sexual reproduction, there is no kind of seed formation, no gamete formation, simply a parent plant, and using that we are preparing a daughter plant. So in that case there will be no differences. So that will also be an advantageous factor, you know, when we want the parent qualities to be in the child also, in the baby plant also. है ना? For example, if the parent plant of sugarcane produces sugarcane which are of very long length, and it is also very sweet in nature, it has a very high sugary content, and you want that this particular sugarcane I want to replicate, I also want it in my field. So what will you do? You just take a stem of it, sow it in your own field, and you will get exactly the same length of sugarcane and the same sweetness also. So since over here there was no genetic mixing, no seed formation and no gamete formation, only a stem was cut and sown, that means the new plants that will be produced will be exactly similar to the parent plant. Okay, so when you want to have the same qualities as a parent in the child, in the new plant also, you use this method of vegetative propagation. And very important that plants which do not produce seed, if a plant does not produce seed, then how will you be able to grow it? For example, rose does not produce seed, so you have to use a stem cutting. Banana, which is seedless, if you want to make its plant, you have to use suckers. Okay, likewise for jasmine, orange, which do not have seeds, this can be used to prepare by vegetative propagation. Plants grow and produce flowers very fast, or I can say earlier than the ones that are being produced by sexual reproduction. Since the method of growth is faster, they can easily produce fruits and flowers which are, you know, at very early time, so that we can say that the growth is very fast, or we can say rapid, and it is also very low cost because you don't have to get seeds, because getting seeds nowadays is also very expensive. You have to pay for it, and some very good quality of crops, and for plants you need good quality of seeds which can be very expensive also. Desirable qualities of plants such as taste, size and quality of fruits are preserved. They can be easily taken from one generation to the next. They can be easily propagated. Okay, then a large number of plants can be produced in a short duration of time, obviously because the method is very fast. They produce the fruit flower faster, so that means a large number of plants can also be produced using vegetative propagation as a mode of asexual reproduction. Now let us solve some questions related to these topics. Question number 4 says bryophyllum produces new plants through. We just now studied that bryophyllum actually uses the buds that are present on the surface of the leaves, and that helps in vegetative propagation. So apical buds, absolutely no. Then vegetative buds that are produced in the notches of the leaf, yes, this one is correct. Flowers are not used, fruits formed, no, they are not responsible. So option B over here is the correct option. Next question says the mode of reproduction in Spirogyra and Planaria respectively are what? So you know that Spirogyra is a multicellular algae and it breaks down and each fragment forms a whole new organism. So in case of Spirogyra we can use fragmentation, and in case of Planaria, where a body part, when it is cut or damaged, each one can regenerate into a whole new organism. So this is basically regeneration. So we have to choose fragmentation and regeneration combination, that is found in option C. So C is the correct option. Next question says assertion reason type. So over here we see that first assertion says offspring produced by asexual reproduction are genetically similar to the parent. That is absolutely correct, because in case of asexual reproduction only one parent is involved, and when there is one parent, that means the offspring will be exactly the photocopy of the parent. You can say a clone also. So both of the statements are correct and reason is the correct explanation. So I can choose option A over here to be the correct option. Now coming to the next mode of reproduction, students, that is called as sexual reproduction. It involves gamete formation and gamete fertilization. Also it involves two parents, unlike in asexual reproduction there was only one parent. Now talking about sexual reproduction, we have to cover it in two ways, in flowering plants and also in humans. But I would suggest that before we jump on to any of these, we should first understand some basic concepts that will help you in understanding the reproduction, sexual reproduction very easily. See beta, like we discussed that in case of sexual reproduction, gametes are formed. What are gametes? I told you they are basically reproductive cells. Okay, they are basically reproductive cells. So over here beta, what you see are your reproductive cells, or now more precisely we will call them as gametes. We will call them as gametes. This is a more appropriate term, okay? And in case of sexual reproduction, as we know, both the parents are involved, male as well as female. So the one gamete will be formed by male, so this will be called as the male gamete since it is formed by the male, and the other gamete will be formed by the female, so it will be called as the female gamete. So both the parent have produced one each reproductive cell or gametes. Now in the next step, both of them will fuse together. Both of these gamete, male and female gamete, will fuse together. So over here, can you see beta that this part represents your male gamete, this particular parts represent your male gametes and the nucleus of the male, and the other part represents your female gamete and the nucleus of the female. So the cytoplasm of both the cells got combined and the nucleus also got combined. So it formed one single cell. Beta, this one single cell is called as zygote. This is a single cell structure. This is a single celled structure. And how did it form? How did it form? By the fusion or fertilization of the male and the female gamete. Fusion or fertilization beta means simply that both the things got attached together. So this is called as fertilization. When the gametes were formed by the male, by the female, male gamete, female gamete, fertilized to form a single cell structure that is called as zygote. Now beta, this zygote will undergo multiple divisions. This will undergo many cellular divisions. Once it goes many cellular divisions, you know, one cell will form two cells, 2 to 4, 4 to 8, 8 to 16 and so on. So ultimately it will actually generate a ball of cells. Can you see, this looks like a ball and it has so many individual cells. It has so many individual cells. This particular structure which is looking like a ball of cells, this is called as embryo. Okay, this is called as embryo because zygote divided so many times to form an embryo. Now till this process it is common in plants as well as in humans. Okay, but the fate of embryo is actually different in case of plants and animals. Let us discuss that. In case of plants beta, this embryo will actually form a seed. This embryo will actually form a seed, and this seed beta will be capable of giving rise to a new plant. This will be capable of giving rise to a new plant. Got my point? In case of humans, if I talk about, this embryo will actually form a fetus. This will actually form a fetus. Now what is a fetus? The baby that actually remains inside the mother's womb. At the time, till the time it is in the mother's womb, it is called as fetus. And this fetus, when it comes out of the female body, that is called as a baby. Got my point? So, you know that gamete formation, fertilization, zygote formation, embryo formation is common in plants and in animals both. But the fate of embryo can be different. Embryo, in case of plants, it forms seed and that can grow into a whole new plant. And in case of humans, it actually forms a fetus. When it gets delivered, it is called as a baby. Now that is the basic structure you need to know. Same thing is represented with the help of a diagram. Over here, you can see that there are two gametes that are present. When the gametes fused, it formed a single cellular structure that is called as the zygote. See, it has the nucleus of both of them, right? There is blue nucleus and then there is a pink nucleus. So that means it has received the nucleus from both the gametes. Forms the embryo-like structure. Gametes are reproductive cells that take place in reproduction. Fertilization is the fusion of two gametes. Zygote is a single cell structure which forms after fertilization, and embryo is actually formed from multiple cellular divisions of the zygote. Okay, now this is the whole thing that you should need to remember because question can be sometimes asked from the definition part also. Coming to sexual reproduction in plants, you must have seen that on stems there is a bud like this that is often present. If let us suppose this is the stem, this is a bud that is present. Okay, so this bud actually encloses a flower. When this bud will open up, you will see a very beautiful colored, brightly structured that is called as the flower. Correct? So the part of the bud that attaches it to the stem is called as the pedicel. It is called as the pedicel. So this region is actually the pedicel that will attach the bud to the stem. Okay, over here you also see beta some green colored structures that are present, and they are enclosing the beautifully colored structures inside. So these green structures that are present outside, these are your sepals. These are actually representing the sepals. So I can say they are the protective covering that are actually enclosing the entire colored structure present inside. Now if this sepal just open up, what you see is a brightly colored structure. These are called as the petals, and these are actually responsible for attracting the insects for pollination. When this flower open up and it blooms, it looks somewhat like this. This is a sideways section of the flower. Now let us label everything one by one. As you know that this particular structure is called as the pedicel. Very easy to understand, we just now covered. These green colored structure are called as the sepals that actually protects the petals, and these are your petals, brightly colored, very beautiful looking, है ना? And then this is not just about it. This is for the human attraction, insect attraction. This looks very beautiful. But the actual purpose of a flower is to reproduce. And how will it reproduce? By producing male and female gametes, because you know that reproduction involves male and female gametes. It involves male and female gametes. And who will produce a male and female gamete? Male reproductive structure, female reproductive structure. So if the flower also has to produce male and female gamete for reproduction, it should have male reproductive structure and female reproductive structure. Exactly, beta. That is what happens. Do you see this beautiful long stalk-like structure? This one. This has a small balloon-like structure on the top, and then it has a long filament that attaches itself to the base of the flower. है ना? So these are so many in number. On either side it is present. It is the male reproductive part. This represents the male reproductive part, and since it is the male reproductive part, beta, it will also produce the male gamete. So this is called as the stamen, or the other name is androecium. It is androecium. In bracket you can also write male reproductive part. Now what will the male reproductive part do? It will produce the male gamete. This is a short note just to make you understand things even better. Likewise, in the center you see a very beautiful structure present over here. This one, this beautiful structure that is only present over here in the center. This is actually beta the female reproductive part. This represents the female reproductive part. And what will the female reproductive part do? Obviously produce female gametes. So this has a name called pistil. You can also call carpel, also called as gynoecium. These are just one name, I mean different names of the one thing. Also called as female reproductive part, and female reproductive part will produce the female gamete responsible for taking part in sexual reproduction. So I hope you are now well versed with the parts of the flower. But this is not as simple as it looks. These are the basic labelings. Obviously, you should know. But this is not how simple it is. There are more parts to the pistil, and there are more parts to the stamen also. Let us cover this in the coming slides. Before that, there is a quick revision. Sepals protect the flower in the budding stage. Petals are basically brightly colored, often very large, and they attract the insects for pollination. Anther is the male reproductive part, produces male gametes, exactly what we discussed. Pistil or carpel is the female reproductive part that produces the female gametes. Let us now cover anther and pistil in detail in the coming slides, and the structures also are very important. Talking about stamen or androecium, that is the male reproductive part. है ना? This is what we studied exactly. Now, sometimes the diagram can also be asked in the examination. So, let us try to draw this. How does it actually look? So, this stamen has a structure somewhat like this. Okay, the all over structure that you find over here, which has two compartments, students, this particular structure is called as the anther. This is called as anther. Okay, this anther has the pollen grains. This anther inside has the pollen grains over here. There are so many pollen grains present inside the anther. Okay, now do you see this long stem that is emerging from the base of the anther? This long stem like structure, it is a filament that is emerging from the anther that connects the anther to the base of the flower. Okay, so this is termed as your filament. This is actually your filament, mostly like a supportive structure. Okay, talking about anther, as I just now told you, it has pollen grains present inside it. There are so many pollen grains that are present inside it. Okay, so these are some structures that are called as pollen grains. Now, inside the pollen grains are the male gametes. So, pollen grains, and inside the pollen grains are the male gametes. So, if I want to show you a structure in a more descriptive way, what I'm going to draw is first open up the anther a little bit. Let us just open the anther a little bit. All these pollens will come out. These pollens are just now going to come out. And if I take one pollen and draw it, what I'm going to find is inside of which is present your male gamete. So pollen grain sometimes or mostly it looks like this. This is the pollen grain. Inside the pollen grain, students, is the male gamete. This is how it is. So pollen grain encloses the male gamete. Got my point? That is how the structure of the androecium looks like. Coming to the structure of gynoecium, or I can say pistil or carpel, also known as the female reproductive part, and female reproductive part will actually responsible for producing the female gamete. Now let us draw it together. Very easy to understand also, as we just now saw from the diagram. This is how the female reproductive structure looks like. This is how it looks like. Okay, now it has better three parts. It has three parts. If you see the top portion, this is actually called as the stigma. The term stigma comes from sticky. It represents that it is very sticky in nature. So this stigma is actually sticky in nature. Why is it so? Let us discuss it in a while. Then this long elongated structure that you see from this point to this point, it looks very stylish. So it is called as style. And then the overall, this particular swollen portion actually represents your ovary. This is your ovary. Okay guys, now inside the ovary is another structure that is present, and this is called as ovule. And this ovule has inside, that is present, a female gamete. It has a female gamete, also known as the egg. So this is the female gamete that will take place in the reproduction, also known as the egg. So I hope things are now clear to you. Where was the male gamete present, and now where is the female gamete that is present? Okay, so stigma, style, ovary. Inside ovary is the ovule, which has the female gamete, which will take place in or part in reproduction. Now I just told you that stigma is actually very sticky in nature. What is the reason behind? Let us suppose that there is some pollen grain that comes near to the stigma. So what will it do? It might also just get swayed away by the wind, and it can never stick on. So that is why stigma is supposed to be sticky, so that whenever the pollen grains come in the vicinity of the stigma, they can automatically stick to it, and all of them just sit on the stigma. Got my point? But now the question comes that who will transport the pollen grains from the anther to the stigma, because anther mein pollen grains that are being formed has the male gamete, and if they have to reach to the female gamete in the ovule, they should also because of some reason they should come and stick on the stigma. Who will help? Let us see in a while. Before that, we will cover different parts of the stamen and androecium. See, stamen, that is basically the male reproductive part, has anther as well as filament. Anther will produce male gamete that is present inside the pollen grains, and filaments actually holds the anther in position. Pistil at the female reproductive part, also called as the carpel, has stigma, style and ovary. Stigma will receive the pollen grain during pollination. Style will provide the passage for pollen tube. Not to worry, we will just cover this portion in in few slides. And ovary has the ovules that will contain the female gamete. So this is the overall structure. Now coming to the main point, how are these pollen grains supposed to reach to the stigma? Because that is what we want, because all of these pollen grain, students, has male gametes inside of them. They have male gametes inside of them, and for zygote to form, fertilization to take, we have to very strictly provide the pollen grains to the stigma. This takes place by a process that is called as pollination. So pollination beta is a process in which the transfer of pollen grains take from the anther, to the stigma. They are taking place from the anther to the stigma. And once all the pollen grains come and land on the stigma, we can say that now the pollination process is successful. Got my point? And this particular process of pollination can take place by multiple agents. What are those agents? It can take place by wind. Simply, wind will basically move this anther, pollens come out and they reach to the stigma. It can also take place by water. That means simply if the plant is aquatic in nature, the currents of water can move this anther and then pollens release and now land upon the stigma. It can also take place by the help of insects. Some insect might come to the flower to collect some nectar, because of which they just move this anther and all the pollens stick on the body of the insect, and then when the insect moves and lands upon the stigma, it can deposit all the pollen grains over there also. These are the different agents of pollination that you must remember briefly only. Okay, that is how pollination takes place. Now pollination also has different types. First type of pollination that we need to study, it is called as self-pollination. It is called as self-pollination, and the other type of pollination that we need to study is called as cross-pollination. It is called as cross-pollination, and you should know both of them. Let us see one by one. There are two cases that you need to study in case of self-pollination, case A and case B. Observe this very carefully because most students can get confused over here. Do you see in case of case A, there is only one flower and then the pollens are being transferred from the anther to the stigma of the same flower. From the anther to the stigma of the same flower. So you mean that there is only one flower of a particular plant and then the anther is taking, transferred from being the anther to the stigma. So it is self-pollinating because it is on the same plant. Okay. In case of case B, over here, do you see that this is also a same plant because this is the main stem and this is from where the branching is being taken place. So the plant is being the same. Okay. But the flowers are different. But still it is self only. Just like two different rooms of one home. Exactly the same way, these are belonging to the same plant, but the same plant, and but the flowers are different. So over here the pollen transfer is taking place from the anther of the one particular flower to the stigma of the other particular flower, but it is on the same plant. So from the anther it is going and landing to the stigma of the same particular flower of the same particular plant. So this is self-pollination. Now coming to cross-pollination, in this case there are two different flowers involved and there are two different plants. Okay, do you see over here they are not connected at all. This is one particular stem of one flower on one plant. This is the other stem of other plant on the other plant. Now over here the pollination process will take place from the anther of one particular flower, to the stigma of another particular flower of different plant. So these are different plants, different flowers. This is called as cross-pollination. Okay. Now in case of cross-pollination, again the chances are slightly less, but this is very advantageous because the seeds produced are very healthy, has new characters and has greater survival chances. Now, talking about the same thing because it could be asked in the forms of difference between also. Firstly, let us look at the definition which says pollination is the transfer of pollen grains from the anther to the stigma of a flower of the same species. Obviously very important. It is not possible that the pollen grains of rose are now reaching the pollen grains of the hibiscus because that will not produce a new plant. So the species has to be same. Whether hibiscus, whether rose, anything but the species remains the same. Talking about self-pollination, transfer of pollen grains from the anther of the stigma to the same flower or the same plant. Same flower or same plant, examples are pea and wheat. Talking about cross-pollination, transfer of pollen grains from the anther of one flower to the stigma of a flower on the other plant. Other plant, that means it's completely different. They are not connected at all. But again, they are of the same species. Example, maize and papaya. So these are the common differences that you need to know. Now let us suppose the pollen grain after pollination has successfully landed on the stigma region. The pollen grain has now when come completely to the stigma, it has to ultimately reach the female gamete. The female gamete is also called as the egg. Now what will happen? Look closely. Let us see, this is the pollen grain that has just now come. Okay, this is the pollen grain, and this pollen grain somewhere has over here the male gamete. Now, since the pollen grain actually landed over here, what will the pollen grain after sitting will do? It will form a long tube-like structure. It will form a long tube-like structure which is like this. Do you see? Just change the color. This is the tube that is coming out from the pollen grain. Okay, this is coming out. This is a pollen tube. Why is it called the pollen tube? Because it is coming out from the pollen grain. So it is a pollen grain, and let's just say this is the pollen grain. This is the tube that comes out. This is coming a pollen tube. Okay, now the pollen tube is coming out, and once it starts to come out, it will also cause the movement of the male gamete. So the male gamete will start moving to the pollen tube. It will start moving through the style, through the ovary, and then ultimately it will reach the ovule. Once it reaches the ovule, students, it has now found the female gamete also. So what will happen? This is the male gamete, this is the female gamete. They will fuse together. Once they fuse together, they will form a single cell structure. They will form a single cell structure, and that single cell structure is called as the zygote. This zygote will have the cytoplasm of both the cells. This will have the cytoplasm of both the cells, okay, and this will also have the nucleus of both the cells. So this is how the zygote is going to actually look like. When this zygote further divides, it will form a mass of cells or a ball of cells that is called as embryo, as we discussed initially only. This embryo will further after develop form a seed, and seed will eventually grow to form a new plant. That is the basic mechanism, students. That is how simple it is. Pollen grain comes, pollen tube forms, male gamete comes through the pollen tube, reaches the ovule, then zygote formation, embryo, seed, and new plant. As simple as that. Now, coming to fertilization in plants, the same sequence is written. Pollen grain carrying the male gamete will now land on the stigma. Pollen tube formation has taken place. It will go through the style, reaches the ovary, enters the ovule, and then male gamete reaches there. Fertilization takes place, zygote formation, embryo actually forms seeds. Now beta, once this has taken place, the embryo is forming seed over here. So what can I do? I will just simply make a seed for your better understanding, or let us say just making a seed over here like this. Let us say this is the seed. Over here, beta, seed formation has taken place. Once the seed formation has taken place, okay, in the ovule actually formed a seed, and this swollen portion around will also form a fruit. So ovule formed the seed, and the ovary and the wall of the ovary actually form the fruit. So I hope it is easy to understand that outside part is the fruit and inside which is the seed. So that is what is written over here also, that the ovule where the fertilization took place, it actually formed seed, and the ovary will form the fruit. This is asked several times in the exam, that what is the fate of ovary, what is the fate of ovule. Alongside, the fate of floral parts are also asked once the fertilization has taken place. Once everything is done and dusted, what will happen to the floral parts? The zygote actually forms an embryo, obviously very understood, because zygote will divide to form embryo. Okay, ovule is forming seed, ovary is forming the fruit. Ovary wall is actually forming the fruit wall. Again, see, this is the ovary, so ovary is going to form the fruit. And then what will the ovary wall do? Beta, this will form the fruit wall. As simple as that. Now, talking about sepals and petals, both of them will dry up and fall, and then stigma and style will also dry up. So the main storage purposes that will be taking place will be inside the fruit also, which is also very fleshy and has a good amount of sugar content. Now talking about seed, once we got the seed, how was the seed formed? From the embryo, because embryo, once it had gone multiple divisions, it actually formed the seed over here. As you can see that embryo was responsible for forming the seed. So if I open the seed, I should ideally find the embryo. Yes or no? Everybody will agree. If I open up the seed, I should ideally find the embryo. Exactly what happens if this is the seed and this is the seed coat. If I open up the seed coat, I should find an embryo. And yes, definitely, I do find an embryo. If this is the portion that you see closely, beta, this is the embryo. This particular region represents the embryo. So I'm going to label this as the embryo. This embryo has two parts. This embryo has two parts. See, this is the upper region, a very sharp looking like region. This upper region, beta, this is actually called as the plumule. This upper region is called as the plumule, and plumule part of the embryo is responsible for forming the shoot system. This plumule is responsible for forming the shoot system, that is the system that is above the ground, which involves all the branching, stems, leaves, flowers, fruits. It will be formed from the plumule part of this particular embryo. Now talking about this lower part, this particular lower part, it actually is representing radicle. This lower part represents radicle. As you can see, it is written, and radicle is actually supposed to form roots. So it is very easy to remember. R for radicle, R for roots. So radicle will form the root system. That is how easy it is. Embryo, it has two parts, plumule, radicle. Plumule forms shoot and radicle forms root. That is all. But now think about it logically. If you want the embryo to develop into a whole new plant, it should have shoots also, it should have roots also. So it should ideally get some food also. है ना बात सही? So the food is provided by these balloon-like structures that you see over here. These two balloon-like structures are actually filled with a large amount of food. This is filled with a large amount of food, beta. And these structures are called as cotyledons. These are called as cotyledons. So both of these structures that you see over here, this is also a cotyledon and this is also a cotyledon. Now, these two are cotyledons, and think about it. If there are two cotyledons, cotyledon number 1, cotyledon number 2, what will we call this? That this seed is actually a dicotyledonous seed. This is a dicotyledonous seed, okay? Because it has two cotyledons. This is how simple it is. Now coming to the parts of seed, seed coat, protective covering. Embryo is the baby plant inside the seed that will actually form into a whole new plant. Talking about embryo, it has two parts again, plumule and radicle. Plumule will form the shoot system, radicle will form the root system. Cotyledon basically has the stored food to provide it to the growing embryo. Now coming to reproduction in humans, again, since in reproduction in humans also there will be two parents involved. One will be a female parent and the other one will be a male parent. And what will they do? Obviously, they will produce the gametes, male and female gametes. So beta, female produces the female gamete, that is egg or ovum. This is the name of the female gamete. So the female gamete is actually called as the egg or the ovum, and the male gamete is actually called as the sperm. It is called as the sperm. And do you see the structure of the sperm? Although you should, there is not much detail given in the book, but still you see there is a pointed head-like structure and there is a long tail. This is how the male gamete looks like. It has a pointed head-like structure and a tail. Now once these gametes are formed, egg and the sperm, fertilization will take place. Can you see over here again? This is your ova or egg, and then sperms are coming to fertilize it or fuse it. Once the fertilization has taken place, a zygote structure will form, that is a single cell structure, only has one cell. It undergoes lots and lots of cell divisions, and once it undergoes lots of cell divisions, it will form a ball of cells that you call as embryo. So there are so many cells that are present inside. Once this embryo develops, beta, inside the mother's body, this looks somewhat like this, because slowly and slowly this embryo will form organs, it will develop the head, it will start having limbs, small hair also. So this is called as the fetus. As long as this is inside the mother's body, this is called as the fetus. Okay, this fetus in humans takes 9 months to fully develop. Obviously, some plus minus days are there, but it is called as a fetus when it is inside the mother's body. And once it is delivered, once the baby is received in the hands of the parents, it is called as offspring or baby. So these are the terms you should be familiar with once again. The question comes that, ma'am, are the males and females able to produce the egg and the sperm respectively at all stages of life? Since birth, is this female able to produce the female gamete, that is egg? Or since birth, is this male able to produce the sperm, that is the male gamete? The answer is no. There is a specific time period in the lifetime of a male and a female when they are able to produce the male and the female gametes. Okay, that is called as puberty. The time period at the age of 12 to 13 years, when there are so many changes going on inside the male and the female body, that is when their sex organs develop, and that is when they are able to produce the gametes. So in puberty, there are certain changes that are seen in both males as well as females. One should know, because difference between do come from this particular part. Males have facial hair, body hair, pubic hair, muscular development of sex organs. The voice also becomes very, very deep. Okay, and then sperm production actually begins at the time of puberty. So this is happening at puberty only. Okay, now talking about females again, body hair development, underarm hair development, the sharpening of the voice takes place. Again, sex organ development takes place, mammary glands do develop, menstruation also begins in female, and that is when also that there is the production of the female gamete. So these are certain changes that you should remember for both males and females. Now talking about male reproductive system, since it is a male reproductive system, students, I hope all of you can now recollect that this will produce a male gamete. And what is the male gamete in humans? It is sperm. Okay, this is your sperm. So sperm production will take place in the male reproductive organ. So let us see over here a small sperm that I have drawn, and only one I have drawn, but there will be so many sperms. Okay, so beta, now look at this structure closely. The sperm formation is taking place inside this particular organ. The sperm production is taking place inside this particular organ. This is called as the testis, because over here the sperm is being formed, and this structure is called as the testis. Okay, so I'm going to label this as testis. This testis beta is actually in one pair, or you can say that there are two in number. But you will say that, ma'am, over here we can see only one particular testis. Where is the other testis beta? It is on the other side. This is a sideways section. This is one testis, the others are present on that side. Okay, and this produces the sperms. So the sperms are actually produced in the testis, and these testes are also called as the primary sex organ. So I'm going to write primary sex organ, because they are responsible for producing the male gamete. So any organ that produces the gamete is called as the primary sex organs. But beta, this sperm ideally has to move and then come out of the male body and enter the female body. So there should be some kind of pathway, है ना, so that the sperm can move out and eventually enter the female body. So yes, there is a long tube-like structure that comes out from the testis, and this tube-like structure, I think you can easily see from here. This is a long tube-like structure that is coming out from the testis. So the sperm will enter this particular tube. Okay, the sperm will actually enter the particular tube over here. So see, this is the sperm formation in the testis. It will now move, enter this particular tube, and then it will eventually reach through the tube. It will start moving outside, and this particular tube is actually called as, students, vas deferens. This is called as vas deferens, that will carry the sperm out of the testis. So the sperm will eventually then move outside. Let us for the time being just put the sperm back over here. Okay, now beta, once the sperm is over here now in this particular, once the sperm is over in this particular point, there, do you see that there are certain structures over here also? There are certain ball-like structures over here also. They produce some fluid, and once the fluid is produced, they just simply drop that fluid over here in this particular region. They just drop their fluid in this particular region. These are actually your glands beta. These lobular structures that you see are actually the glands. Okay, so this particular is actually your seminal vesicle. This is also a gland. This is actually a seminal vesicle. This is a gland that produces the fluid. Okay, now I will tell you what is the fluid. Don't worry, this is seminal vesicle. These glands are actually called as the prostate gland. Okay, prostate gland. This is just one. Do you see two? Because it is looking like divided, but it is one. Okay, this is the prostate gland. And then over here also other glands that are present, they are called as bulbourethral glands. They are called as bulbourethral gland. All these glands actually produce some kind of fluid and deposit it in this particular tube. This fluid beta, it is having lots and lots of food for the sperm, because the sperm has to move through all these ducts, and then it has come over here. It has also move outside the male body. So it requires some energy. So all these glands, seminal vesicle, prostate gland and bulbourethral glands, they produce a particular kind of fluid. So they produce eventually a fluid, okay, and this fluid is extremely rich in nutrition. This is rich in nutrients or nutrition, and this nutrition will provide energy to the sperm. So now when the sperm comes, it mixes in this fluid. The sperms will actually mix in the fluid. The sperm will actually mix in the fluid, not like this, but it is actually going to mix in the fluid. And when the sperm mix in the fluid, all of this together collectively is called as the semen. This is called as the semen. So the question is sometimes asked that what is the composition of the semen? It definitely has sperms and it also has fluid that will provide nutrients to the sperm. It will give energy to the sperm to move further. Okay. Now see, this sperm, when it moves further, it has received all the fluid secretions and then it dissolves in this and then it tries to move further. Also the fluid is providing energy. This is completely mixed in semen. Now the sperms come out of this particular tube. Okay, and once it comes out of this tube, it is outside the body and it will enter into the female body. Okay, but how will it enter? Let us see. Firstly, let us just move it over here. This particular tube through which the sperm will move, this is termed as urethra. This is called as urethra. Beta, urethra is the common passage for the sperm as well as the urine, because through this urine will also be expelled, urine will also come out, and also the sperms will supposed to come out from this urethra only. Okay, this muscular organ that you see over here, which is filled with blood vessels, this is termed as penis, and penis helps in the insemination process. That is, they will simply transfer the sperm from the male body to the female body. This is called as penis. Okay, so the sperms, what will they do at the time of when there is sexual intercourse taking place? The sperms will actually move, and once the sperm move, they comes to the urethra and then they will enter into the female body. Now one more point, very essential to understand this. Do you see this testis? Beta, this testis that is actually producing the sperm is enclosed in a bag-like structure over here. This is the bag-like structure that is enclosing the testis. This is called as scrotum. This is called as scrotum, a pouch-like or a bag-like structure that is supposed to enclose the testis, that is enclosing the testis. But what is the reason why it should ideally enclose the testis? The simple thing is that the normal human body temperature is 37 degrees Celsius, and for the sperm formation to take place inside the testis, it requires a body temperature lower than the normal body temperature. Okay, so the temperature should be little less, and this scrotum is responsible for lowering the body temperature. Okay, so which is around, I can say, if the body temperature is 37, this temperature happens to be 2 to 2.5 degree less than the body temperature of the testis. And how is it secured? It is done with the help of scrotum only. Okay, now reading the exact things, scrotum maintains the testis at a lower temperature, 2 to 2.5 degree less than the normal body temperature, essential for the formation of sperms. Very important, asked in the exam several times. Okay. Now testes, they produce male gamete sperms and produce the hormone testosterone, which is absolutely essential for all the secondary sexual characteristics that is taking place in the males during the time of puberty. Testosterone obviously responsible for the regulation of sperm formation and changes during puberty. Vas deferens will carry the sperm from testis towards the urethra. Urethra is the common passage for urine and semen, and this is the semen which has the sperm as well as the fluid which has nutrients, seminal vesicle, prostate gland, and also bulbourethral gland, which is not written over here but I showed you in the diagram. They will provide secretion to the sperm which has nutrition, and it also makes the sperms mobile and helps in the transportation easier. Penis will actually deposit the sperm into the female reproductive tract whenever there is sexual intercourse. Now talking about female reproductive system. Female reproductive system is also essential to understand because this will be responsible for producing the female gamete. This will be responsible for producing the female gamete. And what is the female gamete? It is the egg or the ova. So it is going to be produced in the female reproductive organs. Understanding this again with the help of a diagram. In case of females, over here, you see small bag-like structures on both the sides. These are the ovaries. Again, you see they are 2 in number, 1 or 2, or you can also say that this is present in one pair. So this is actually called as ovaries, and ovary is again present in one pair. It is also again primary sex organ. Again, why is it primary sex organ? Because it produces a egg, or I can say ova. So it produces an egg or a ova, which is a female gamete. So it is called as the primary sex organs. Both of them are responsible for producing the egg or the ova, but for the time being, let us just draw one. Let us just draw one over here. Okay. Again, do you see there are some tube-like structures that are emerging from both the ovaries? These are certain tube-like structures. And over here is also a tube-like structure, and over here is also a tube-like structure, this particular. These are certain tubes. But these tubes are called as fallopian tubes, or also known as the oviducts. They are called as fallopian tubes or oviducts. Again, कितने हैं number में? We can say they are 2 or 1 pair. Fallopian tubes or oviduct. 1 pair again. This is then connecting to another structure that you see is inverted pear-like. This fallopian tube from this end and this end is connecting to a structure that is inverted pear-like. Pear is nashpati, a fruit, and this looks like an inverted pear-like structure. This whole structure is termed as uterus. This is called as beta uterus. That is why you must have heard that your mother says that I have kept you in my stomach for 9 months, but that is not stomach, it is actually uterus. So uterus is where the development of the fetus takes place inside the female body for about 9 months, and this is the uterus. Okay, uterus beta again has 3 linings. It is made up of 3 layers. Okay, inside one, do you see the innermost one present all around inside, and then there is one in the middle, and there is one on the exterior. So it is actually made up of 3 layers, but you don't need to understand this in detail. You can for the time being only understand that this is the inner lining of the uterus. So why am I telling you this information? Because it will be required ahead. Inner lining of the uterus. Okay. Now, once the development has been taking place of the fetus, do you see that there is a small opening over here? There is a small opening over this particular region. This is actually called as the cervix. Okay. So, once the baby is present over here, let us say this is the baby's head, it will come out. So, the cervix will dilate. It will increase the size. And once it increases the size, the baby's head can come out. So, this particular region is called as the cervix. This particular region is called as cervix. Okay, and then this whole region, this wider mouth-like region, it is called as the vagina. It will be termed as vagina. Okay, now let us see beta how things happen. Okay, once every month, the female ovary releases the egg from the ovary and it comes and sits in the fallopian tube. When it comes and sits in the fallopian tube, it waits for the sperm to come and fertilize it. Okay, let us say that sexual intercourse has taken place and sperm has come inside the female body and it is present in the vagina. Now track the direction or the route of sperm also. Okay, how are things happening? Let us try to recollect. This is the sperm. It has entered the female body from the vagina. It will move through the cervix. It will move through the uterus. Then it will move through the fallopian tube and ultimately reach the egg. है ना? So this is how the sperm reached from the vagina to the fallopian tube. This is how the sperm reached from the vagina to the fallopian tube. Got my point? So it is also to be remembered that there is not just one sperm. There are so many sperms that enter, but only one comes and fuses with the egg. Okay. Now assume that fertilization has taken place. To assume in the first condition that fertilization has taken place. Fertilization occurs successfully, and then see the changes that will take place. Okay, so over here let us see that fertilization took place and one big zygote has been formed. Because you know what is zygote beta? Zygote is actually a single cell structure that is formed after fertilization of the male as well as the female gamete. So this is the zygote. Let us also label it so that you don't get confused. This is the zygote. Okay, now see. But every month, you know, what does this uterus do? The inner lining prepares itself. The inner lining prepares itself that, you know, it might think that the fertilization will take place. And if the fertilization takes place, I have to be always ready. I have to thicken myself. I have to richly supply myself with blood vessels so that if fertilization takes place, zygote forms, embryo forms, fetus forms, I can provide all the nutrition. Okay, so once the zygote has formed it up successfully after the after the fertilization process, it will start to divide. So this one cell will again form two cells over here. This will form two cells over here. This will further divide and form even more cells. Two cells will further form four cells. Okay, it is now going to form four cells, and so on and so forth. Cellular divisions will take place. Once it has formed a large mass of cells, that is called as embryo, there are so many cells that are being present inside the embryo. So many cells inside the embryo are present. It eventually comes and now enters into the uterus. And once it is entering inside the uterus, beta, all of this will now implant or attach to the endometrium. All of this will now attach or implant to the endometrium. This is the inner lining, and this whole embryo will now attach. This attachment is called as implantation. The term is called as implantation. Simply you can write implantation, although this is not mentioned in most of the books at this particular level, but still you can write attachment of embryo to the inner lining. Inner lining is also called as endometrium. I just spoke about it, but it is not again asked in the exam, but you can write endometrium of the uterus. This is a slightly more information. You can just write it down to, you know, enhance your concepts and get an edge over the other students, that what is implantation and what is endometrium. So once this has taken place, beta, it will slowly divide further to form the fetus. It will develop limbs, head, body hair, and then till 9 months it will completely develop over here, and after 9 months you are going to eventually find a baby like this inside the mother's uterus. It is also seen in ultrasound. Okay, so this is how it actually looks like. Got my point? Reading the same thing over here, ovary is the site of ovum or egg formation. It may contain many immature egg but only releases one egg every month. How many eggs are released every month? Only one. Fallopian tubes are also called as oviducts, again present in one pair. They carry the ovum from the ovary to the uterus. It is also the site of fertilization. Again, very frequently asked, what is the site of fertilization? Where does the fusion of sperm and egg take place? In the fallopian tube. Uterus is the worm, again inverted pear shape, elastic bag-like structure. Embryo and fetus development take place involved in menstruation. Again, I will explain you in the coming slide. Cervix connects the uterus to vagina. It dilates during childbirth. Dilates means simply increasing the size, the opening of its mouth. Vagina is the passage for sperm, passage for menstrual flow, and acts as the birth canal because the baby or the fetus eventually comes out from that particular route. Now you might think, beta, once the fully developed fetus is present inside the female body, or even when it was growing, you should know that it should require some kind of nutrition. It will also require gases, है ना? Because it doesn't have connectivity to the outside world. So how is it supposed to eat? How is it supposed to breathe? There should be some mechanism. Alongside that, the fetus will also produce some waste. So how is it eliminated out from the body? Let us try to understand this. For this, there is a very nice mechanism of placenta. Placenta is an organ that is formed temporarily. It is formed temporarily inside the mother's body whenever the female is pregnant. So placenta, beta, it is not present always. It is only present when the female is actually pregnant. Do you see? This is the uterus. This whole structure is the uterus, okay, where the development of the fetus is taking place. And from the uterine wall, there is coming out this particular structure which is attached. This particular structure, beta, it is called as placenta. It is a disc-like structure. This is your placenta, and this placenta is such a beautiful structure that it is able to provide all the nutrients from the mother's body to the fetus and from the fetus to the mother body. So the food, the oxygen will come and reach to the fetus. The waste as well as the carbon dioxide will be given back to the placenta. A better image of the placenta can be seen from this particular image. Do you see this disc-like structure? This disc-like structure is basically attached in the uterine wall, the wall of the uterus. If this is the wall of the uterus, this is the placenta. Okay, but now do you see there is no actual connectivity? If this is the placenta, then placenta is not directly connected to the fetus. Over here you see, this is the placenta, it is not directly connected to the fetus. There is another structure that is connecting the placenta to the fetus, which somewhat looks like this over here. And over here is also some structure that is present like this. This is called as umbilical cord. This is called as umbilical cord. So this actually connects the placenta and the fetus. This connects the placenta and the fetus. Very, very important to understand. Let us read this for steps and the points one by one. Okay. Placenta is a temporary disc-like structure. Temporary, which means it is only till the time of pregnancy. Disc-like structure, okay, acts like a link between the mother and the developing fetus. Fetus is connected to the placenta by the umbilical cord. It has villi on the embryo side so that the surface area can be increased, so that exchange of nutrients and gases can be even more facilitated, can be even more faster. The developing embryo will also generate waste substances which can be removed by transferring it to the umbilical cord and then to the placenta. Very, very simple. Now coming to the next topic, what if there is no fertilization? What if there is no fertilization of the ova or the egg? This is case B, again very important. No fertilization. So let us say that the ova is actually produced. The ova is actually produced by the ovary. Okay, it is released every month and it comes and sits over here in the fallopian tube and it waits for the sperm. Okay, meanwhile you also know that the lining of the uterus prepares itself very well so that just in case the fertilization has taken place, it can support pregnancy. So the lining of the uterus, inner lining, will always develop itself because it has no idea whether fertilization will occur or whether it will not occur. So it is always pre-prepared. But let us say over here in this case, there is no sperm that has come. There was no sexual intercourse, so no sperm came. Okay. So the egg actually waits for 1 day over here. The egg is waiting for 1 day, no sperm. And then what will happen? All the lining of the uterus, which was intensively supplied with the blood vessel, they will all break down. They will all break down. Do you see all of it break down? And once it broke down, it is coming out in the form of blood through the vagina. It is coming out from the blood through the vagina because since there was no fertilization, the lining of the uterus thought that, what will I do? There is no embryo coming to attach itself to me. So what shall I do now? I shall break and come out from the vagina in the form of blood. That is called as menstruation, and it happens, basically when the female egg is not fertilized. Okay. Now this process of the blood flow which comes out through the vagina, has lots of blood and blood vessels break down, is lasting for about 2 to 5 days on an average, but again it can be plus and minus from female to female, and usually takes place when there is no fertilization of the egg cell. So if the egg is not fertilized, it lives for about 1 day, 24 hours. Every month the ovary will release 1 egg, and uterus also prepares to receive the fertilized egg, so its inner lining gets thick and spongy, so that it can nourish the embryo just in case the fertilization takes place. But kyunki fertilization nahi hua, this lining is not needed, so it breaks down and comes out through the vagina. Comes in the form of blood and mucus. This is called as menstruation. It will last for about 2 to 8 days. Menstruation is a monthly shedding of the uterine lining when fertilization does not occur. If fertilization occurs, then menstruation will not take place. Very, very simple to understand. Coming to the last and the most easy topic, that is reproductive health. Now talking about reproductive health, you can understand from the name itself that it is a health related to reproduction. In many backward areas, many villages, when there is no such information about hygiene of your reproductive parts, taking care of your reproductive parts, and also there is a lot of pressure from the family and from the peers to have babies. This can not only lead to physical health deterioration of the person, or also the reproductive and the mental health deterioration. So reproductive health is basically to be healthy in all the spheres: physical, mental, emotional, and in terms of reproduction. Okay, that is when you say that a person is reproductively healthy. But again, the information about reproductive health, the information about being sexually active or inactive is a very taboo-like topic in India, where most of the people don't really want to engage in conversations like these. But they should be very well aware, because unwanted sexual intercourse or having intercourse at the wrong time, at a wrong age, can also lead to many health diseases. Such diseases which can pass on through sexual intercourse, they are called as sexually transmitted diseases, and these diseases are not basically by touch or by any kind of other means apart from sexual contact. So there should be sexual intercourse, and once that takes place, it will be carried from one person to the other. Examples that you should remain, okay, remember are bacterial diseases, they are called as gonorrhea and syphilis, and viral diseases which are basically warts and HIV AIDS, okay. So these are some of the sexually transmitted diseases. Just read the definition of reproductive health once. Refers to the state of physical and mental well-being related to the reproductive system and protection from reproductive diseases. Now talking about contraceptives, see, the population of India is reaching a new surge. That is because obviously people think that the more the kids they have, they can earn a living and then they can, you know, sustain their livelihood, especially in rural areas. Whereas they are not really aware that a small family is a better family. More times reproduction can also be a burden on the family, especially if they are not already earning well. And then again, there is since, you know, some pressure from the families that it can lead to only a boy child demand. So they just keep on producing babies. They should also understand there is a method of contraceptives that can be used to avoid pregnancy or prevent pregnancy just in case the couple is not ready for it, so that there is no such unwanted production of babies. These are called as contraceptive methods, and they also to certain extent, you know, inhibit the transfer of STDs or sexually transmitted diseases. Now, there are various kinds of contraceptives. Let us first understand the physical method. Physical method is the one that will actually physically block the meeting of the sperm and the egg. If the sperm and the egg do not meet each other, that means there will be no fertilization, no pregnancy can take place, okay. So, prevents the union or the meeting of sperm and egg, prevents STDs, and it is easy to use and again safe. It is very readily available, such as condom, and it is very easy to use. No medical intervention is required. Also, it has very good, you know, reproducibility. It is very well guaranteed to avoid STDs, okay. And then hormonal method, usually it plays with the hormones such that the female does not produce an egg. Hormonal method are mostly used by females in the form of oral contraceptive pills. It is written over here, OCPs, don't get confused, it is oral contraceptive pills. Oral means that you have to take something by mouth. Contraceptive means that will prevent pregnancy, and pills means medicine. So these are basically like your normal medicines that you take, just that they will prevent, you know, contraception. So the egg will not be produced since there is no egg. But in that case, even if the sperm comes, no fertilization will take place. But again, since it is hormonal, it will actually intervene with your hormones, so it has side effects also. Okay, mostly taken orally, so it is mostly by females, not by males. Next, we have intrauterine devices, also called as IUDs. IUDs has intrauterine devices. From the name itself, it is clear, uterine, so it will be obviously used by females again, not males, because only females have a uterus. So what does it do? That the uterine device is intrauterine, which means within the uterus. So the device will be entered inside the female body, such as copper T. Copper T is actually one such example that is inserted inside the female's uterus that releases copper ions. And when the copper ions, they sit on the sperms, if say sexual intercourse has taken place and copper T is present inside the female body, sperm will come and copper ions will come and sit on the sperms, so that the sperms will become very heavy. They will not be able to move, they will not be able to swim, and thus they will not be able to reach the egg or the ova. And as a result, fertilization can be absolutely avoided. Pregnancy can be actually avoided. So it also prevents implantation, and it is done by the help of a doctor. You cannot just go to the market, purchase copper T and insert it yourself. You do need some medical intervention in this. Then you have surgical methods. In case of surgical method, beta, it is a permanent method. It is once and forever, okay. So the couples who are very sure that they don't want to have a baby anytime in the future, they should only go for surgical method, because it is a termination method. Iske baad, no matter how much you try, you cannot conceive, okay, as a couple. Males may it is called as vasectomy, females may it is called as tubectomy. Let us try to understand this with the help of a diagram so that things are even clear. Do you see over here, in case of males, the vast difference that was coming out of the sperm, or that was coming out of the testis, carrying the sperm, this was the vast difference. It is simply cut and tied. It is over here, cut and tied. at this portion. So now what will happen? The pathway of the sperm has been interrupted. The sperm, if it was formed somewhere over here, the sperm, if it was formed somewhere over here, it will now not be able to cross the vas deferens. It will just reach this point, and then how will it move towards outside? Because the path is blocked. So this is called as vasectomy. Okay, vasectomy, that means simply the vas deferens of the males are cut and tied, and the sperms cannot now reach outside. The sperms will be produced, but they cannot move outside. It's called as vasectomy. Vas because vas deferens. Over here, in case of females, do you see these are the oviducts? These are actually the oviducts that are coming out from the ovary. These are the oviducts. And oviducts, what do? They simply, over here, they have the egg. Sperm comes, fusion take place and can move outside. But since the oviduct is cut, again, egg transportation will not take place. So, oviducts are also cut and sealed. So, again, no transfer of the eggs, this is called as tubectomy. Tubectomy. Got my point? So, the fallopian tube or the oviduct was now cut and sealed. This is the whole mechanism. Again, I am saying this is once and for all. It cannot be reversed. So, it should be done only when the couple is very serious about not having any children thereafter. Now, let us try to solve some questions. Question says the incorrect statement about placenta is that it is a disc-like structure embedded in the uterine wall. This is absolutely correct. It contains villi on the embryo side of the tissue. Correct, to increase the surface area, right? It has very small surface area. No, it has a very large surface area. So, option C is incorrect. That means we have to choose option C as the answer, because the question is asking for the incorrect statement. For the incorrect statement, be very precise. The embryo gets the nutrition from the mother's blood through it. Absolutely correct. Very nice. Now, question number 6. Mention the part of the organism, female human reproductive system, where contraceptive devices such as loop or copper T are placed. Obviously, since copper T, as you know, it is an intrauterine devices. So, definitely it has to be inserted inside the uterus of the female. So, uterus will be the correct answer for this one. Then, which particular part is blocked to prevent the transfer of eggs? Which will be blocked? Fallopian tube or the oviduct. So, we can write fallopian tubes or the oviduct. Next part says where formation of green cells, this is not green cells, but this is actually germ cells. There was some printing mistakes. Where the formation of germ cells such as ova takes place, it takes place in the ovary, because ovary is the primary sex organ. Why primary sex organ? Because it produces the female gamete, that is the ova or the egg. The part from where the embryo gets nutrition from the mother's blood, it is placenta. So, it is your placenta. Placenta is the part from where the embryo gets nutrition as well as oxygen, and also it releases the body's waste as well as the carbon dioxide using the placenta. Now, the next question says define puberty. List any 2 changes seen in the boys at the time of puberty. So, talking about puberty, puberty is a particular time period in the lifetime of an individual which is around 12 to 13 years of age, where there are multiple secondary sexual characteristic development taking place because of hormones. 2 changes seen in boys. Obviously, the voice becomes very, very deep. Muscular development takes place. Body hair development, pubic hair development, sex organs development, and sperm production. You can choose any 2. I have spoken a lot of them, but any 2 that you feel you are easy to recall them, you can mention it down. Why are testes in human males located outside the abdominal cavity? Because the sperm formation requires a temperature slightly lower than the human body temperature. So, the scrotum is responsible for finding that lower temperature, about 2 to 2.5 degree less than the body temperature. That is why it is present in the pouch called scrotum. List any 3 techniques of contraception by humans. Which of these is not meant for males? Beta. Any 3 methods of contraception: physical method such as condoms, hormonal method such as oral contraceptive pills, intrauterine devices such as copper T. Okay, then which one of these is not meant for females? Obviously, intrauterine devices men cannot use. This is correct option. Okay, you can use, men cannot use intrauterine devices. The same thing is mentioned over here. Puberty is the stage of life then when body undergoes physical changes, becomes capable of sexual reproduction, deepening of voice, body hair, enlargement of testes and production of sperms. Why are tested outside? Because it requires 2 to 2.5 degrees Celsius temperature lower than the body temperature for preparation of sperms. Techniques for contraception: barrier method, physical methods, hormonal method, oral contraceptive pill, IUDs. Not meant for males, but a hormonal method usually not meant for males, but you can also write IUDs. Intrauterine devices are actually not meant for males. Now, coming to the question number 8. Name the part performing the following function in human female reproductive system. Production of eggs, right now we did. This is your ovary. Okay. Then site of fertilization, again fallopian tubes. This is your fallopian tubes. Site of implantation, uterus. Entry of sperm through the vagina. Then, what changes are observed in the uterus subsequent to implantation of zygote? That means prior to implantation of zygote, beta, the inner lining of the uterus will become thick and spongy. It will be richly supplied with the blood vessels so that just in case the fertilization takes place, it can provide all the nutrients to the developing embryo. And if there is no fertilization, in that case, what will happen? It will shed off in the form of blood, and that is called as menstruation, which lasts for about 2 to approximately 8 days in human females. So all the answers are written over here. If you just want to take a screenshot, you can, so that you have a clear idea of, just in case the question comes a similar type of in your exam, then you can answer these things. The next question again is a case-based question. Pollination is an important process in sexual reproduction of plants. It is essential that facilitates fertilization. Agents can be wind, water, insects and birds, and many changes take place in the flower. Main difference between self-pollination and cross-pollination. Beta, in case of self-pollination, it takes place between the same flower or different flowers of the same plant. But in case of cross-pollination, it takes place between 2 different flowers of 2 different plants but the same species. Got my point? And then the next question says, name the part of the flower which attracts insects for pollination. For attraction, you need something that is very, very brightly colored, very, very large. That is your petals. Okay. Next up, we have what happens to this part after fertilization. It will beta shed off. It will dry and shed off simply. There is no other purpose now because it has served the purpose already. Define fertilization, the process of fusion of male and female gamete to produce a single cell structure called as zygote. We just discussed. What is the fate of ovules and ovary? Very, very important. This is several times asked in the exams. Ovule is actually responsible for forming the seed, and ovary will actually form the fruit. Got my point? So, fruit is your basically ovary. Inside you have a seed, that is your ovule, formed by the ovule. Next question is actually a homework from my side to all of you. It is not a very, very typical question. So please make sure you just answer the correct one in the chat box. A zygote is formed by the fusion of male and a female gamete. The number of chromosomes in the zygote of a human is what? Simply use your minds, use the knowledge that you have grabbed in the entire lecture and try to answer it down so that I can see how many of you are actually watching the lecture very dedicatedly. That is all for the session today. We have wrapped up this particular chapter. But if you still have any doubts, you can please let me know in the comment section below, and we will get back to you as soon as possible. Till then, everybody, please take care of yourself, stay hydrated, eat well, and I will see you in the next session. Thank you so much.